Let me show you what's quickly becoming one of the favorite parts of my game room down here. Hidden in this cove on the side and hooked up to our large OLED TV is this N64 and this Dreamcast down here. Not to mention, if you look over here, there's one more system really hiding deep back here. That's a PlayStation 1. What makes these systems so special? Well, they've all been modified in one way, shape, or form or another. What do I mean by that? Well, check this out. There's a lot of modifications you can do to systems. The more popular systems to mod seem to be handhelds, especially Game Boys. There's far less mods for these systems. They're far more expensive, but they tend to keep these systems a little more relevant and enjoyable for a longer period of time. I want to show you a brief overview of what these things do, then I'll show you one by one what exactly is inside them that makes them tick. But the first one I want to show you is going to have to be done over here because it needs power. This N64 looks like a normal grape N64, one of those futuristic, fantastic colors. But watch what happens when I turn it on. This N64 is modified to have RGB lighting inside, and it even comes with a remote, so I can change this relatively easily to something kind of cool. What's the point of having a fully RGB modded N64? I don't know, but it's kind of fun. Next we'll get into the Dreamcast over here, and finally, come over here, we'll talk about this PlayStation 1. Let's just quickly unplug this N64 from its little alcove here. Hold that cable, don't fall please, please don't fall, okay. Put that here. I'm going to unplug all the controllers from the Dreamcast. You can tell which system gets used more frequently. I'm going to pray I don't... Oh, there goes the cord. Unplug that one. And finally, let's go over here and try to unplug this PlayStation 1. It's kind of hidden back here. This was a super custom PlayStation 1 I had made from a nice gentleman online who I'll talk about later when we go through these. Let's go pop a squat and talk about these. This Nintendo 64 has been modified not only for the RGB lights like you saw earlier, but it also has been modified for HDMI out. There's a whole board that must be carefully, and I mean carefully, soldered to the main board of the Nintendo 64 that provides that modification. There are people online who do it. I don't do that. I can't solder, I'm not good at it, my hands are kind of shaky, and I have fat fingers, so I tend to avoid that kind of stuff. If I was confident in my skills, I'd take it apart and show you that board. I believe this has the Pixel FX mod inside of it, and it's been great. A mod like that really makes the colors pop, it makes those graphics crystal clear, and the text is very sharp in all games. What you might not notice is where that HDMI port is. Check this out. Right under the good old-fashioned AV output for the N64 is a little mini HDMI cable. That's all it takes. This little port here will provide the best picture and sound quality possible for the Nintendo 64. I spent a lot of money on this, and it was done by a good friend of mine. And the sad thing is, I really don't use this. I'm not an N64 hater by any means. I enjoyed it back in the day, it was a great party system, but I really don't play it that much. For me, it's cool to have in the collection, it's cool to have over for game nights and when people want to play it. It's easy to bring it to school now on modern TVs. Honestly, it's just kind of a waste of money for me. I won't be getting rid of it anytime soon, because I do like this. I just hope one day I'll find more time to play it. Moving right along, get rid of this N64 and introduce my Dreamcast. This Dreamcast was something I've wanted for a long time. This has been modified with the DC HDMI mod. I saved all my pennies and I was finally able to afford my ultimate Sega Dreamcast. For some reason I loved the Dreamcast when I was a child. I got one on day one, I played it every day, and I still own the same Dreamcast way over there in the game area. It served me well, it's held up for a long time, and still it's a lot of fun to play. Some of my favorite games are still stuck on this system, not to mention all the cool peripherals they had. So when I saw there were lots of mods available to keep the Dreamcast going, I jumped at the opportunity as soon as I was able to afford to. The first thing I did was I bought a Dreamcast that really didn't work well and was kind of cheap and didn't read discs all the time. I sent it off to my friend, and he put on this custom shell, but he also modified it for HDMI out. On top of that, he added a clean power supply. One thing to note about Dreamcast modifications is they can get quite tricky. For some reason, the Dreamcast original power supply doesn't like new mods. I kind of get it, but if you intend on modding your Dreamcast at all, the first thing you should probably do is put a new power supply in. So anyways, he puts in this beautiful custom shell that he had lying around, changes the LED light out to be pure white, and it looks great when it's on. It also looks really cool under black light. But let's get into the mods now. On the back, you can see the original power cord has been replaced. This now takes a power supply for like a laptop. Pretty easy to find, pretty cheap, not a big deal. The internal power supply itself is much smaller and much more efficient. But here's the cool part down here. Do you see it? It's very difficult to see, but down here is an HDMI port, another mini HDMI port. This here is what makes this so worth it for me. Being able to hook the Dreamcast up to modern TVs quickly and efficiently through HDMI has been a godsend. It's a wonderful thing to have to bring to Game Club at school and here at home for game nights. It's really easy to move this Dreamcast from TV to TV because of HDMI. Now I do need to carry a different power supply, and I do need to carry mini HDMI cables with me, but that is a lot easier than trying to hook up AV cables to TVs that might not have those ports anymore. Those are the expensive mods, the power board and the HDMI mod. They were very pricey, but I think they were worth it, and I did save a long time to get them. I also added a new mod to this system myself. If you pop it open, you'll see there's no more optical disk drive in there anymore. Instead, what you see is a slot for an SD card. Recently, I took out the optical drive, a very simple process to do, and added a GDEMU. Now, if you intend to try adding one of those yourself, it'd be very wise to also change the power supply out. Otherwise, you're going to run into problems. I can almost guarantee it. What this does is allow you to play perfectly legally owned backup copies of your Dreamcast games off an SD card. It is a lot more convenient than carrying discs around, and they won't get damaged like discs do. Even if you don't damage the discs and do the best you can to keep them preserved, over time they're going to rot. This is a great way to make sure that your favorite games are preserved for future generations, friends, family, whoever wants to play. That was also an expensive mod. The GDEMU and the SD card can get quite pricey. All in all, I have a lot of money tied up in this, but I don't regret it at all. This here has provided not only me, my family and friends at game nights with hours of fun, but also the video game club with a ton of fun as well. They really enjoy playing the old fighting games on Dreamcast, and I'm glad there's an easy, good way to preserve these things. I'm also thankful for the people out there who come up with these great engineering solutions to get these old consoles working on modern equipment. Without them, we wouldn't be able to enjoy nearly as much as we do. And moving right along, let's get rid of the Dreamcast and talk about the final thing, my most recent addition, and that would be this heavily modified PlayStation 1. Just gonna go ahead and take all these things out of here. All right, there we go. And let's talk about this, because there wasn't much done to this PlayStation 1, but what was done, it was very important. So first thing you'll notice is it's an old model PlayStation 1. This has the good old-fashioned AV out in single cable format that went away pretty quickly in the PlayStation era. There was a lot of revisions to the hardware over time. The serial port went away, these ports went away, and they condensed them. So this is an early model. Now, the early models aren't really meant to be modified. In fact, the wonderful person who modified this for me said this would be a challenge for him, and I'm sure it was, but I think he knows at this point that I really appreciate that. So what makes this PlayStation 1 so special? Well, again, if you pop open the lid here, we're no longer going to find an optical disc drive. What we're going to see inside is an optical disc drive emulator. Let me go check. I forgot what it's called. I have a sticker somewhere. Let me be right back. This is called the X-Station mod. And what that is another complicated soldering job that goes to the main board and allows you to run perfectly legally owned backup games off an SD card on the PlayStation. Hopefully you can see a view of it there, a custom printed 3D enclosure for the SD card, but what you can't see are all the guts to this mod. I'm really afraid to pull this thing apart because I think I'll break it. So for right now, all you can see is there is an X-Station in here and there is an SD card here, and it was done perfectly. I also believe there's a new power supply in here as well. Things you should very much consider if you're going to put modern hardware into an old system. Modern hardware likes modern power supplies, and they don't like to play well with the old power supplies. At a certain point, these modified systems like this PlayStation and this Dreamcast here become sources of video game preservation. Because of these modified systems, I have been able to take them to school, to video game club, and share with the kids loads of experiences they never would have had. So now it's time to talk about where do you get these mods done at. And this is the important part, because you need to find people who know what they're doing. These mods are not cheap, and if done poorly, they can do more damage, and you'll have to pay more money to fix them, if they're even fixable. A lot of these soldering jobs are extremely complicated, require micro soldering, soldering ribbon cables. If you're skilled, sure, you can do them yourself. But I think most people don't have those skills, me included. So for my Nintendo 64 and for my Dreamcast, I had those HDMI modded by a gentleman on this website, YouTube, called Crossface Gaming. If you search him in Crossface Gaming, I'm sure you'll find him. He does mods for everything, and I mean everything. Any system you can think of, chances are he can do the mods for it and he can do the repairs for it. Very talented person, a good friend at this point. I'd recommend going to him for a lot of these HDMI mods. He's a recommended installer, I believe, for most of them, if not all of them. The mod for the SD card, the GDEMU, he didn't do that. I did that myself. That was something I could handle, but he did all the hard work. I came in and did the really easy part. Next up, this PlayStation 1 was modified by a gentleman on here called 16-Bit Vic, Retro Vic. He did an incredible job modifying this thing to just play so smoothly and run so smoothly, and it included these AV out ports that I wanted so bad, and it plays great, it looks great. Everyone who comes to game nights at this place and video game club has just absolutely fallen in love with PlayStation 1, and I can't thank him enough. He is a very talented guy as well. Just great work. You can check out his TikTok, his YouTube, and you will see all the stuff he's doing. Very nice guy, very friendly, easy to work with. And that's about it. These modified systems are quickly becoming my favorite stuff down here, and I hope in the future I can get more. Just remember, when you go to look at modified systems, there's a lot of time, money, and effort that goes into them. They're not very cheap, they're not really affordable, and if you're in a position where that's not something you can do, I don't recommend them. These were a great addition to the collection, something I'm cherishing right now and hope to keep getting more of in the future. I hope you enjoyed looking at these modded systems with me, and I hope you understand now why I enjoy them so much.